Thank you all again so much for being here. So while we cannot change our chronological age and our birthday is the day we were born, we're learning now that there's so much we can do before we get sick to change our biological age and our pace of aging and extend our health span, which is how long we live in good health. So I want to ask each of you to briefly give us an overview. And Andrew, I'm going to start with you and go down the line. How are we rethinking this road to 100 and even 150, let's say, to close the gap between health span and lifespan?
Sure. Well, it's great to be here. My name is Andrew. I'm CEO of Prenuvo. I can say probably the single biggest change that's happening in the last few years is we're starting to get a lot more data about how the way we're living our lives or how the way we're living our lives impacts the underlying physiology of our bodies. And at Prenuvo, we do that with imaging. There are other folks that are doing that with blood or epigenetics. And I think that information really helps give us all as individuals a lot of agency over the way we live our lives and hopefully leading to better health outcomes for us as individuals and society at large.
Interesting. Daisy.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here. Thank you. So from my perspective, I'm really focused on ovarian health and how that influences female health and health span. And I think what we're increasingly coming to appreciate is that while we know that women tend to live longer lives than men, a great proportion of those years are actually spent in poorer quality of life. And that's in part because our ovaries age at an accelerated rate relative to the rest of the body. And they're also the pacemaker of aging for women. So the lens that I bring is really that of women's health and how ovarian function is really the seat of health and well-being for women, and how if we can improve and or extend the function of the ovaries, that ultimately will lead to more quality years of life for women and potentially also greater longevity.
Great. Alina.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting. Hi, everyone. My name is Alina, the CEO of Generation Lab. What we are doing in Generation Lab is we're aiming to extending the health span of what people are currently living up to. So we are the first world's expansion on the health span that can measure the biological age and also the fitness level of your organ down to 19 different organ functions that in your body. So what we are believing is measuring the biological age, but not only the biological age, also the how you are aging, what is causing you aging, what is the efficacy of the supplements, medicines, treatments that you are currently doing to your body is the most important way for us to get in touch with how is the best way for you to expand your health span.
Definitely, and there's a lot of noise in this space, but there's not a silver bullet, right, or magic pill to extend our life. So for our audience, Daisy, I want to ask you, can you help us decipher the difference between research-backed longevity science and pseudoscience?
Yeah, I think that we live in a day and age where there's a lot of marketing that's pushing out products that make claims that aren't substantiated. And I think because wellness has become such a cultural hip thing, longevity is very much bucketed into that. We have a lot of companies out there that are selling vitamins and supplements and interventions with claims that aren't really supported. And so, I think what's important for the consumer and for people that are making decisions is that you really look underneath, because even a lot of these companies will say, we have scientifically backed whatever the thing is, ingredients. And I'm, as a pregnant lady, I was doing a big deep dive into prenatal vitamins to see what companies were out there and how they're formulating and what are the ingredients and what's the literature that's supporting those ingredients. I mean, a lot of the time there's just not literature to support even some of the products. So while there might be a study here or there that says, oh, this particular thing influences mitochondrial metabolism, it's not necessarily to the degree of the claims that are being made. So I think the thing that I really often like to put out there is just to increase your skepticism like 10 to 100-fold and try to do some legwork on where are the claims coming from, really understanding that and unpacking that and recognizing that a lot of people are making a lot of money and selling you what I think lots of us like to call expensive urine products.
Well, that's a really interesting point. Alina, I wanted to bring you back into the conversation. Your company uses data to assess people's biomarkers and therefore pace of aging, and then it gives people specific lifestyle recommendations. At the same time, right, we know that the cornerstones of healthy aging are exercising, eating well, maintaining social connections, and when we think of the blue zones where people live the longest, we think about community and purpose. So I wanted to ask you, right, in this age of longevity, how do you balance precision medicine using the data that you just talked about with, again, these very basic cornerstones of aging?
Yeah, we always go with the 4 pillars of the health, which is eat well, sleep well, exercise well, and take care of your mental health. But what we are seeing is people actually doesn't do that at all because they don't know where to start from. Even that getting hydrated is something that we know that's very important, but people are not drinking 7 cups of water per day. And we know that we need to constantly reminding them, give them a launch pad, where exactly do they need to start from? So this is what we're aiming for, to actually guide them to a path that this is the way that you're getting healthier, and this is the way how you're doing it based on your epigenetic. So that's the way that we are trying to tell them, your body is behaving good, or which part of your body do you need to care more, even though you're not having any of the disease? Because if it's disease already, we're calling that as sick care, not health care anymore.
Yeah. You mentioned giving them a launching pad, which definitely brings me to you, Andrew. Prenuvo's full body MRI scan has gotten very popular. There's a wait list and you're opening up clinics. And, at the same time, I think some skeptics, might say that, that a lot of this over-testing could cause, undue psychological harm if you're getting, an indeterminate finding or a minor finding. So can you speak to some of that and why you think this is an important tool for longevity?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are a lot of people talking about screening right now, and I would say you'd be really hard-pressed to find a physician that has first-hand knowledge about what we're doing at Prenuvo that isn't referring us patients. So really the challenge is education about how these scans are different to perhaps attempts at doing this in the past. What we're finding both in clinical practice and in clinical trials that we're running is that the accuracy of these scans, if anything, sort of are equivalent to and may well over time exceed what we're seeing in standard of care screening. That's not to say it's a replacement, but to say that these are pretty phenomenal results given that we're not screening just for one cancer or one disease, but we're screening for most anything that we can see physiologically from cancer to the very early stages of chronic disease. So to go back to the blue zone sort of question in some ways, I mean, this is such a crude way of trying to understand longevity. We're finding these little patches where people are living longer, and then we're trying to work backwards and figure out, well, what are the drivers of that long life? And we would say, well, there's a much better data-driven approach here, which is why don't we just look inside each one of us and understand and look at each of the organs and understand how they're aging. How does my liver look compared to someone of my age? How does your brain look compared to someone of your age? And each of us, what we find, has something that we individually might need to work on, either because of the way we lived our lives, or our genetics, or just pure chance. And the knowledge of that is what empowers us to then live the best life possible.
Definitely, really interesting point. I'm going to come to the audience after this next question, so keep any questions top of mind. But Daisy, you mentioned this at the top. You're particularly focused on extending the health span of women, researching prolonging ovarian health. You even once said that menopause may be optional and a choice. So what therapeutic interventions should we be prepared for that can extend women's health span?
Yeah, the field itself is sadly sort of early still, so most of the things are quite far from being approved in clinic. But at Oviva Therapeutics, what we're working on is an intervention that would slow down how quickly the ovarian reserve is depleted. That's the number of eggs a woman has at any given point in time, and is one of the core determinants of when you undergo ovarian decline at what's now middle age. So what we're bringing to market, or what we're bringing to clinic, I should say, is a therapeutic based on a naturally occurring hormone called anti-Müllerian hormone that basically slows how quickly we lose our ovarian reserve, and in doing so extends the runway to menopause, pushing that out to a later date. And there's so much that we don't know, so the comment of like menopause could be optional, I genuinely think that's biologically possible. We haven't shown that ever. In fact, very, very few animals actually go through menopause, so it's something you can't really test preclinically in any really strong or compelling way. But in terms of how we understand the function of the ovary, there's no reason to assume that we can't allow it to function for a greater number of years, at least on a small scale, commensurate with what's currently out there, things like HRT or whatnot. But there's other strategies that people are starting to ideate around, which I think are really interesting. And I think that in the next 10-ish years, we're going to start seeing some real optionality for women to have some interventions that allow them to extend ovarian function. And I do want to just quickly make the comment, a lot of people, like the first thought that they go to is like, oh, well then women will get pregnant when they're really old. That's not the purpose of that's not the goal of what we're trying to achieve, really. It's to offer agency and to correct for the fact that we experience really significant inequality as women because we have accelerated aging at the midpoint in our lives. And we know that not only is this a significant driver in declines in quality of life, but it's also declines in our broader economy and our social connection and all the aspects actually of the 4 pillars of health that Alina mentioned. It's just disruptive to sleep and mental and physical health and emotional health and the connectivity we maintain. So I think that we can do better. There's a lot of interesting mechanisms that we can innovate around to generate solutions to this strange biological phenomenon that we uniquely experience along with whales. And it'll be really interesting to see how it comes forward.
We'll have to have you back on the stage in 10 years to find out.
I'll be there.
So I want to go to the audience. Are there any questions that we have? Have any? No? Okay. Well, I have a lot of questions. I wanted to talk a little bit about, this concept of over-optimizing, with these technologies. Is there any extent to which we are willing to compromise, quality of life when it comes to what we're tracking, what we're monitoring, having to go to these scans every 6 months, right? I mean, what is the line? Are we drawing a line? Anyone can jump in.
Sure. I mean, my perspective is this question is best addressed at some of the people at the very sort of extremes of the longevity spectrum, the Brian Johnsons that are sort of like spending millions of dollars on hundreds of different interventions. I would say that the challenge that we face as a health system is that we are taught that we are normal until we all of a sudden are diagnosed with advanced disease, whether that's cancer or a sort of a chronic health condition. And then obviously our health declines pretty precipitously at that point. And then we're spending an awful lot of money trying to keep us alive with poor health. And as physicians and as patients, we know that's not true. We know that this is a steady process of decline. We know cancer can be growing without any, asymptomatically for a long time. And so, the average person has literally no information about their health. And the starting point here should be providing folks with some, a comprehensive look inside. And it's only through that we can actually sort of really understand what it is that we can do as individuals to improve our health span and lifespan. So I don't think we're close to a problem of too much data, if I'm being totally honest. I think that the challenge is there's not enough data.
Yeah, comments on that. Actually, health span is very different from lifespan. When people are thinking about longevity, they're like, I don't want to live up to 150 years old. But it's impossible if you're having a body that you're having right now and doesn't do any of the intervention that you can live up to 150 years old. That's one. And second is what we are trying to do, like for the people who is on the stage, is really to bring the accessibility and also the knowledge of the power bring to the audience. So everyone is having the right to be healthy again. And this should be the right that everyone is having rather than giving that to the doctor. And this is really what we are trying to do, healthcare rather than sick care. It's not curing disease, it's actually be healthy and maintain health as long as possible. That is what we call as increasing of the health span.
One thing that I'd like to add to that is I think that we really have this aspiration around how these data will inform personal choice and give us agency in doing so, but we're really severely limited by that quality of data and the diversity of that data. And so, obviously being someone who speaks for women's health, we know that there's a historic underrepresentation of females across our understanding of biology, but that's also true of people of color, people from different regions of the world. And so the averages that we might use to guide clinical decisions, certainly in our healthcare system today, but even at the personal level, are really limited by our ability to really understand on that bell curve what actually is normal for you and the background that you bring to that. That's something that I think more of us in the field really increasingly recognize and are bringing forward, and certainly, pharma companies and others as well, because they recognize that if we want the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, we need to really diversify that. We need to put effort and innovation and money and attention into that. So I think that's something in the near term, I'd say over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a lot of change to repopulate the data landscape to help inform how we actually understand human health and then how we make decisions based on that new understanding.
Yeah, I mean, really interesting point you made too, that the average person does not know much about their health. I mean, yeah. Daisy, you also have been outspoken about brain span and this idea of extending, our cognitive health. You once said our negative thoughts are slowly killing us. Pretty sure we've all had that, even in the last maybe 10 minutes. So what are some pearls that you can share just about extending brain span, cognitive health?
Yeah, I think, it's probably unsatisfyingly a lot of the things that you've heard. We know that we know that maintaining equanimity, for lack of a better word, is better for your health. When you have high levels of stress, chronic stress, and you get stuck in those sort of mental traps of getting stuck on that, it really is not good for you. It spans physical ailments. And so things like meditation, even a short 5-minute practice every day, breathing exercises, just a few deep breaths can help reset some of that. And the data that are out there, which are really interesting, there's a couple studies out of Yale and Harvard and some other centers that have been done over the last, I want to say 15 years or so, really demonstrate that if you can orient yourself to have more of a positive outlook and what's called a growth mindset, then that actually can be influential to your physical health and the biomarkers within your body. It's actually quite powerful, and I think there is an increasing effort to understand the mind-body connection and how mindfulness and bringing mindfulness into your daily routine and into the way that you react to or interact with stressors in your life can really make a significant difference to your short and long-term health.
Yeah, interesting. Did anyone else want to add to sort of the idea of brain span?
Another thing is brain is aging in a different way than any other organs in our body, and people doesn't seems to recognizing that. And brain is a very significant organ in our own body that, for example, in the study that we did in UC Berkeley Convoy Lab, is using therapeutic plasma exchange or therapeutic plasma dilution to see how inflammation itself is able to be impacting the brain and how is that able to impacting the brain function and also other organs function. So measuring the efficacy of before and after, I think, is what is lacking right now in the entire what we are aiming to do to expanding the health span. What is actually working, what is not, what is the snake oils and what's not. Telling the efficacy and truly guiding people of what needs to be done is the most important thing right now.
Definitely. And I wanted to also mention, this push to live longer and even forever for some can feel inaccessible, right, to the broader population, as many tests and subscriptions require people to shell out a great deal of money. Andrew, I'll just ask you this, what is your responsibility to ensure that the healthcare access gap doesn't continue to widen, as longevity becomes more in the mainstream?
Sure. I mean, we take our responsibility as an actor in this space really seriously. We are now doing cancer screening for under $1,000 for people in all of our clinics. We're focusing really hard on bringing the cost down even further to the low hundreds of dollars. And we're doing that through scaling up what it is that we do, through speeding up the time it takes to image people, because these machines are so expensive that the faster we can image them, the more we're able to get people through those clinics faster. And then finally, the use of AI, because AI really can help us address the single biggest hurdle and cost in radiology, which is the radiologist's time. And then finally, what we're doing today in imaging folks is really collecting evidence that we can then present back to insurance companies and health systems so that we can demonstrate the effectiveness of these techniques over the long run with a view to having these covered by insurance and health systems and therefore accessible hopefully for everyone.
Definitely. So we're coming up on time. I wanted to ask each of you a very quick question. Just give me one number. I'm going to start with Alina. How long do you expect to live?
Man.
Well, 120 years old is,
Okay.
I think it's, yes.
Expect. I hope to break 100, and my goal is really to be able to dance the whole time.
Love it. That's a real health span, yeah.
If I'm being totally honest, I take it a day at a time. So I get into what I do because I work very hard building companies to create a better future. And I remember waking up one day and looking in the mirror and saying, well, hang on a sec, how do I know I'm going to be around for that future? And so for me, a lot of these longevity interventions, including Prenuvo, is sort of insurance to know that things are going okay today and I can keep working on being a little bit better about my health tomorrow.
Great. We'll take that. Thank you.